Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamerspro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Let me get into this topic here. So this is a pretty interesting one that came across my table this morning. This morning I was going through the internet and I came across an article on Fadeaway World, and they were referring to basically some things that LeBron James's agent, CEO of Clutch Sports, Rich Paul, had to make on a live broadcast of an NBA playoff game. And essentially they were talking about some things, and I think they were also speaking to Chris Haynes from Yahoo Sports, and I think I've seen him on TNT and other places. And they were talking, and then they got into the future of LeBron James, because I believe he has a player option this season, if I'm not mistaken, and he's looking for a contract extension, or they're in negotiation for a contract extension. I believe he has one more year left on his deal. So as they were talking, Rich Paul, in the midst of what he was saying, then basically, I believe, inadvertently goes out there and spills the beans all over the table by essentially saying LeBron James is a free agent. And he's not picking up his option or what. And he, and immediately Chris Haynes asked him, is like, wait, so LeBron is a free agent, which means that there's a possibility that he could be going to another team. And then Rich Paul goes, man, I can't be discussing this stuff on television, which further let us know that he probably didn't mean to say that on live TV. So what we want to do now is want to play exactly what Rich Paul had to say here on live TV as it pertains to LeBron James's future. And then we're going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to what Rich Paul had to say here.
And, look, LeBron's a free agent. You have to decide, and I got to focus on his business, and he should be focused on his business, and let the Lakers hire whoever they want to hire. And he's always showed up and played for whatever coach is there, But, yeah, I hear you, Bomani. And again, I'm not, there's no need to try to drive a specific narrative or try to dodge anything. It is what it is. I think he's earned the right to have input if he wanted that, obviously, but it's just not the case.
Wow.
No. Hold on, but Bomani's going to come. Hold on real quick. You just said something, Rich. You said LeBron's a free agent. So I take it LeBron's going to decline that player option.
Chris, I don't do my business over the phone.
Okay, I just heard what you said.
I don't know what he's going to do. We're going to do what we do every year. We're going to evaluate the situation, and we're going to make the best decision.
Mm-hmm. Right now,
So you heard what Rich Paul had to say there. What are my thoughts? First of all, I believe that was probably a mistake. I don't believe that he did that on purpose. I think that was just maybe he got comfortable and he just slipped up and said what he didn't want to say. Now, what does this mean, though, however? Well, I think it means a lot of things. Why? Because the Lakers are in a period right now where they're going into they're sort of at a crossroad. Why? Because the Lakers have come to the realization that they're simply not good enough to compete for a championship in the Western Conference. They're not good. And if you're paying attention to these playoffs, it is crystal clear. There are teams that are just a tier above the Lakers. I think that teams right now that we can definitively say are better than the Lakers are the following: the Denver Nuggets, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Dallas Mavericks. The Nuggets beat the Lakers. The Wolves beat the Nuggets. And now the Mavs are getting ready to probably sweep the Wolves. So those teams are at a totally different tier, number one. Number two, these teams are also going to get better next year as well. Because as the Lakers look to improve, so do they. The Lakers were one of the bottom teams in the Western Conference. I think that is really where they are in reality. Forget about what talking heads are saying on television. The fact of the matter is that is who they are. They're at the bottom of the conference. And with that being the reality, the Lakers now have to kind of make a decision on a bunch of things. Number one, who do they want to be their head coach going into the future? Do they want to go out there and get a head coach that's going to be suitable for Anthony Davis as they try to build around him moving into the future? Or are they going to get somebody that, if LeBron did decide to stay, would appease LeBron over the next 2 years? You have that aspect of things. Then you have to look at the story around his son, Bronny James. LeBron has also made it publicly clear in the past that he wants to play with his son for at least 1 year of his NBA career. That's one of his dreams. So with that being the case, would LeBron be willing to go to a team other than the Lakers that are willing to draft him and have him on their roster? I think if the Lakers at this particular moment in time drafted Bronny James, they would be doing it for the sole reason for LeBron James. Because if we look at the Lakers, the current state of affairs of the Lakers in terms of a team, clearly they don't need a 6'1" guard. They would need a bigger guy, a 3-and-D guy that could defend and shoot threes. A 6'1" guard would not be what they need. So if they did that, it would also speak to the level of seriousness that the Lakers have. Are they ready to compete or not? And I think that LeBron is going to be weighing all of these options. I think any team is going to be willing to give him the money that has the cap space to give him the money, right? So for Rich Paul to say that, it means that LeBron may be using that as a bargaining chip, maybe to force the Lakers' hands to do whatever it is that he has in mind, whether that may be drafting his son or getting a particular head coach or getting a particular set of players. No one knows. But that information is very important because all this time, based on all of the reports that we've had, we thought that LeBron wants to stay. And if you listen to some of the arguments, I'll just listen to Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson, I believe it was yesterday, talking about LeBron is building a $100 million property in LA. So why would you want to leave that and blah, 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 blah. Now, to me, I don't understand it because LeBron is going to retire in 1 or 2 years. So even if LeBron left LA, he can always come back and LeBron can always fly back to his house, and LeBron always has the summertime. Rich people have houses all over the world. So I don't necessarily know what that means, right? Like wherever LeBron wanted to stay, if you're going to go play for another team, you'd probably be staying in one of the best homes that city had to offer. So I don't really know what that means. And number two, I don't think the development of his home is going to be ready right now. Although that's none of my business. I don't care to know. That's his personal business as a man and his how. I don't care about all of that. But you understand the point that I'm trying to make. Nevertheless, I think that was a pretty interesting slip. Let me get into this topic. This is a topic that I stumbled upon today that really surprised me. But apparently, there's this kind of back and forth that is taking place on the internet between Stephen A. Smith and former NBA player, former NBA legend, Isiah Thomas, right? They seem to be having this disagreement online. Now, what happened? What was it? Just last week, Friday, if I'm not mistaken, Stephen A. Smith was on ESPN and he was talking about the Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics. As you guys know, they're playing this series. And in the midst of them discussing this, Kendrick Perkins was also on the panel. He then alluded to some anonymous comments that he heard about Jaylen Brown, basically speaking to maybe his marketability or whatever the hell the case was. And essentially what happened was Isiah Thomas caught a whiff of Stephen A. Smith's comments and decided to react to what Stephen A. Smith had to say by basically saying, what are you even talking about? Who are these sources and all of that stuff? So what we want to do is we want to quickly play the clip. It's only about an 18 or 20 second clip of what Isiah Thomas was responding to. And then we're going to come back and continue on. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith originally had to say here.
Brown, it's not so much that he's underrated. It's that he's just not liked because of his, quote, I am better than you attitude. He knows it. It's the same reason he is not as marketable as he should be. That's what an NBA source just sent me.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say in that soundbite, right? And it was those comments that caused Isiah Thomas to go on Twitter or X or whatever to essentially call him out by name. And once he put out that comment, it basically sparked this back and forth between these two gentlemen. So let me read what Isiah Thomas had to say. He said, I have been a friend, mentor, and advisor to Jaylen Brown since he was a student at UC Berkeley. He was 100% marketable. And before you slander his name, Stephen A. Smith, tell your sources to put their name on it or don't speak on it. Let it be known. That's what Isiah Thomas said. And in typical Stephen A. Smith fashion, he picked up on what he had to say, and he responded with the following. He said this first. This is on May 26th. I have no idea what you're talking about, Isiah Thomas. I've been a fan of Jaylen Brown for years. Still am. What's unfortunate is that you, who's known me for decades, would choose to go on X to express whatever dissent you feel instead of calling me directly. But I get it. It's a pattern several folks have used versus me recently, suddenly forgetting communication we've always had. So be it. I root for Jaylen Brown always. A great dude and player. But the Celtics have to close the deal. He then says, thank you at Kendrick Perkins, because Kendrick Perkins has said, see the thing hate about clips. Is that Stephen A. Smith, the real Jay Williams, myself went on to praise Jaylen Brown about his leadership and especially the role he plays in the black community. Then Stephen A. Smith responds, thank you, Kendrick Perkins. That's precisely my point. Jaylen Brown received nothing but love on this way, but evidently people want to read into and interpret what they want. I'm not giving this any more damn time. I've been doing First Take for 12 years. I haven't uttered a negative syllable about Jaylen Brown. If that isn't good enough, oh well, I'm out. I'm enjoying my Sunday. As Perk would say, carry the hell on. So this is the exchange. Do you know what is interesting about Stephen A. Smith? What is interesting is that Stephen A. Smith always got some issues with somebody. Just prior to this, there was a thing with him and Draymond Green. And by the way, I'm on his side about the Draymond Green situation 100%. 100%. Draymond Green, anyway. But this seems to be the pattern, man. You know, people always seem to have an issue with Stephen A. Smith. And it's not just one person. There literally is a long laundry list. I can name a few. Steven Jackson, Isiah Thomas now, Jaylen Brown, Marcellus Wiley, Terrell Owens, and the list just goes on and on and on. Jason Willock. The list goes on and on with people that have issues with him. Now, knowing Stephen A. Smith from afar and based off of what I know about him, Stephen A. Smith will most likely view it as people are attacking him, people are hating on him, people are trying to bring him down, and blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is Stephen A. Smith has a big mouth. That's just the fact of the matter. He be saying some stuff. Like, he be saying some foul stuff from time to time. He be saying stuff that, like, Stephen A. Smith will say something like, you know, I heard so-and-so player got knocked out in a club, but I'm not going to go into the details. I would never disclose the details, but all I heard was that he got knocked out. Now, that's his personal business to tell, but he got knocked out. But if you want to know more about it, go out. It's like, bro, you already told. You've already told. So at that point, just say what you heard, right? Say what you know, right? And that's why Isiah Thomas said, look, if you're not going to say what you know, then just be quiet. That comment served no purpose if you're not going to go to the full extent to say exactly what the backstory is. And listen, this is what's interesting about sports media. Sports media is really, I mean, I know, I'm sure they do it in other realms, but in this case, we want to focus on sports media. It's one of the few places where you can say somebody said this and then basically say it's an unnamed source and no one gets to push back on it. Now, on this particular channel, we have never produced a show where we're talking about something that was said or done, where at least we gave a source. And we always give our source in an audio, in an audio format, or in an article. There's always a source. Now, whether or not that source is true, but we can always say, okay, you can go pinpoint this information here. Whenever we do lives and we're hearing breaking stories, you can go through every single live that pertains to a particular story. We always have sources, either Instagram posts, either a direct quote, articles. We always provide a source. I can never go do a live and say, well, based on so-and-so. And now some people say, obviously, you're not a reporter, you don't know anybody. I understand that. But look, after a while, when you do stuff like that and you say something like that, finish it off. In the sense that if you're going to say that and I've been told, who told you? If you're not willing to go that far, then why even bring it up? Now, some people say this is journalism and this is why you're not a journalist. Well, apparently, there's some issues that people have with it. Let me get into this topic here. So it looks like we got some beef all up in the streets these days, right? Some of y'all like, what are you talking about? Well, Stephen A. Smith is beefing with somebody else again. It's always an issue, man. Stephen A. Smith always got a problem with somebody. If it's not Marcellus Wiley, if it's Terrell Owens. If it's not Terrell Owens, it's Isiah Thomas. If it's not Steven Jackson, it's Jason Whitlock. If it's not Jason Whitlock, it's the next person. There's always some drama. Now, what happened? Recently, I believe it was on Friday, Stephen A. Smith was on ESPN First Take, and they were discussing the series between the Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics. In the midst of their conversation, Stephen A. Smith now comes out and just says something about, Jaylen Brown's marketability and all of that got Isiah Thomas, former NBA player, be a legend, two-time champion with the Detroit Pistons, got him upset to the point where he actually called out Stephen A. Smith on Twitter about it. So what we want to do quickly is this. I want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith had to say. It's about a 20-second clip, and I'm going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith had to say here.
Brown, it's not so much that he's underrated. It's that he's just not liked because of his, quote, I am better than you attitude. He knows it. It's the same reason he is not as marketable as he should be. That's what an NBA source just sent me.
Fantastic. So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say there. Now, let me quickly read what Isiah Thomas said in response to Stephen A. Smith. He said, I've been a friend, mentor, and advisor to Jaylen Brown since he was a student in UC Berkeley. He was 100% marketable. And before you slander his name, Stephen A. Smith, tell your source to put their name on it or don't speak on it. Let it be known, right? So that's what Stephen A. Smith said. That's what Stephen A. Smith said there. And then they had their back and forth. But then something very interesting took place after that. Jaylen Brown himself, right? If I'm not mistaken, Jaylen Brown himself goes to the post on X and he responds to it. But let me read what he responded to. He said, first off, that's not happening. It's journalism, not revealing sources. Secondly, if you continue to watch this segment, I completely disagree with them, as did Perkins. The point we're actually discussing is how underappreciated you are and why that may be, which is why I read the quote. I even brought up how socially conscious you are and how that may not be liked. Knowing you're a good brother, also that you're a 300 million man and you deserve it, but that doesn't mean naysayers don't get heard. That comes with the territory. And to that, Jaylen Brown said, state your sources. He was responding to what Jaylen Brown said by him going out there and saying, well, listen, if you heard X, Y, and Z, then please put a name on it. He's like, put a name on it. If you have X, Y, and Z to say, and if you're going to say that, you might as well say who said it. Because if you're not going to say who said it, then why even bring it up? I think the question that Jaylen Brown had, and the question that Isiah Thomas has is, what utility do those comments serve? What's the purpose of them? What are we supposed to do with them? Are they meant to uplift Jaylen Brown? I don't believe so. Now, Stephen A. Smith brought up something that's very critical. And I think that is what we need to address. He said, I want to go back to his comments. He said, first of all, that's not happening. It's journalism. There he questioned him on his sources, not revealing sources. He then said this. Secondly, if you continue to watch this segment, I completely disagree with them, as did Kendrick Perkins. The point we're actually discussing is how underappreciated you are and why that may be, which is why I read the quote. I even brought up how socially conscious you are and how that may not be liked. Boom. I think that's what we're getting at here. I think that particular line right there lies at the heart of what we're discussing. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. Listen, Jaylen Brown is a socially conscious person. Is there anything wrong with being socially conscious? 100%. 100% no. If you want to be socially conscious, it is within your right. If you don't like people that are socially conscious, so be it. All right. I'm not here to tell people who's right and who's wrong. And I don't have that authority because I'm as flawed as the next person. And it's just not my position. Now, some people take those positions on certain issues. Fantastic. That's your prerogative. That's your right. That's your God-given right. Do what you want to do. Right. It's not my job to do that. I don't, get into all of that. However, I think that is essentially the elephant in the room. I think the issue is Stephen A. Smith feels like he's not marketable, in this case, Jaylen Brown, because of his social positions, right? And Jaylen Brown, I believe, feels like that's what he's alluding to. And in the case of Jaylen Brown, I think Jaylen Brown is listening to what he said, and he's like, well, who said that? Who said that? Because I think we both know what you're referring to. And then Stephen A. Smith said, well, I'm not going to reveal my sources because it's proprietary information, whatever the hell he wants to call it. I'm a journalist and all of that. Look, there is a serious flaw within the way journalism is conducted, but I understand why this flaw exists, this mechanism exists. There are certain people that have information, sensitive information, that may be willing to come forward and share it, but maybe because they don't want the backlash, maybe in some cases they want their identity protected because they don't want any issues or harm to come to them, they will go out there and make anonymous comments. I'll give you this information, but I'm not going to reveal my identity. Happens all the time. You've seen it in docuseries and you've seen it everywhere, right? So we have that exists there. And in those instances, we have to make a leap of faith that this person, that we don't know who their name is telling us the truth and their information is credible. Now, here's the other side of it. That's from the journalism side. That's from the part where you want to tell the story, when you want to give a story credibility. Then you have the other part where is the person that the receiving party, in this case, Jaylen Brown, who that thing is being said about, right? And he's saying, look, if this thing is being said about me, I would like for you to state who said it, please. Because if you don't say who said it, there are two things. One, you could be lying, or two, why say it at all? Now, let's get back to Stephen A. Smith and his credibility on some of these issues. And I want to point to some examples of friction that he's had with various players in the past pertaining to this particular thing, which is you're capping. Let's go look at the Lonzo Ball situation. Remember when Stephen A. Smith said the situation was so bad with Lonzo Ball that he couldn't even walk? Then Lonzo Ball does a video of him sit down in a chair and stand back up properly. Lonzo Ball posts a video of him standing and sitting up in a chair. Lonzo Ball said that was an exaggeration. What did Stephen A. Smith do? Stephen A. Smith lashed out at him because he dared push back on whatever narrative he had on television and basically threatened to reveal his doctor, the day he had his surgery, all of these, the clinic that he went to. And we were like, bro, what the hell is going on here? You had that situation. If you also remember, there was a situation with him and Kevin Durant some years ago. And I think this was when Max Kellerman was on ESPN First Take. And Kevin Durant was like, you're lying. Where'd you get this information from? Then Stephen A. Smith publicly threatened Kevin Durant to say, I'm not a person you want to make an enemy out of. And he threatened him on television, essentially, by saying that. And then you have this situation here. I think there's an elephant in the room that Stephen A. Smith may be unaware of. If Stephen A. Smith is watching this, if one of Stephen A. Smith's supporters hears this, Stephen A. Smith, people don't like you. They don't like you. You don't come off as a person that people like. And it's one of the reasons you're always having issues with people. Former players, current players, people in other forms of sources of entertainment like Willie D, and people just don't like you. Excuse me. Some people think you're grimy. Those statements that you said, if you're not willing to say the sort, my thing is, was it useful? Did it serve any purpose? I've said it before, Stephen A. Smith, a grimy ass dude. This is just my personal view. He a grimy ass dude. He is. You need to look no further than the situation with him and Max Kellerman. The guy is out of a job, and Stephen A. Smith went on a diss tour. Basically saying why Max Kellerman isn't even qualified to be talking sports. Meanwhile, you had him on the show for 5 years? That's your man. And there's one person after the other that has issues with you. The question is everybody wrong and they're just attacking you? You know you be saying some foul, wild, crazy. And the irony of it is the minute people either push back or say something about you, you're going to go do an hour show on your Stephen A. Smith podcast pushing back at them. That's what kills me. That is what literally killed. Then you had the Kyrie Irving situation where you made it personal. So at a certain point, we got to look in the mirror. All of these instances, I think there may be something that you're doing that's a little bit off to constantly have people going at you. Let me get into this topic. Some of y'all may be shocked. Like, he calling him that damn Anthony. Yes, I think it's time. I think it's time we're getting to that point where we now got to call Anthony Edwards, at least for today's show, that damn Anthony Edwards. Why am I saying this? As you guys know, yesterday, the Dallas Mavericks, led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, put the Minnesota Timberwolves on the brink of elimination after another impressive win against this team, and they won that game yesterday on the road. I'm at home. Both Luka and Kyrie Irving total 66 points with 33 apiece. Going into this series, Ant-Man, who seems to have the biggest mouth of any player in the playoffs, has been talking trash all throughout the playoffs. Round 1, he was talking trash about KD. He was feeling himself. People were loving it. Round 2, he was playing against the defending champions. We're going to be back here for game 7. All of this, all of that. Bring your ass and all of this stuff, right? People are hyping him up. Doing well. But then, prior to last night's game, he had gone, I think, 3 consecutive games where he didn't score over 20 points or was horrible in 3 consecutive games. And in the game 7, against the Denver Nuggets, where his team came up big and helped them win that game when I was reading these guys. He played defense. And then going into the next series, what does Anthony Edwards say? I got Kyrie. And we all looking at him like, bro, do you know who Kyrie Irving is? And you had Anthony Edwards fans sitting up there in the comments section, twerking it up all over the place, knocking over drinks, slapping each other with honey and all of this kind of crazy stuff because they were so hype. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, yo, you talk a lot. You talk a lot for a dude that's never won a championship. And you got dudes, you're going to be the face of the NBA, you're going to be the next Michael Jordan. I'm like, bro, don't remind me nothing of Michael Jordan. Don't remind me nothing of Kobe. He talked like he Michael Jordan, but he has nothing to really show for it. So we go into this series. Ant-Man is playing horrible in the first 2 games. Then we go into game 3. And he finally has a bounce back game in terms of a game, although he scored 26 points and I think he shot, it took him 26 shots to get those 26 points. But he wasn't the worst player on his team. Karl Anthony Towns was the worst player on his team. And then we get to the post-game comments. And when he got to the post-game, you just wouldn't believe that Anthony Edwards, big mouth Anthony Edwards, started complaining about the fact that the Luka Doncic Dallas Mavericks had more free throws than them, implying that may have been the reason that they lost the game. So for those of you who didn't hear those comments, that's what we want to get into. So what we want to do is we want to quickly play what he had to say and then come back and react to it. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
Yeah, what in that box score stands out to you? See,
31 to 17. They had 31 free throws. We had 17.
So you heard what he had to say. I want to quickly read some comments from what people had to say on what he said. One person said, this is what people said on his Instagram post, and we want to put up the post for you. He said they had 31 free throws, we had 17. Ant-Man, I love you, but stop making excuses. Blame the refs. Nah, what happened to the cocky vibes? Another person, I got Kyrie. Didn't age well. Another person, love Ant, but this is lame, and that's exactly what I shared in my story. Talk too much bleep and got embarrassed. Another person, and don't do that. Not scoring for the last 3 minutes has nothing to do with the free throws. Another person said, bro got all the excuses. Another person said, Carl Anthony Curry needs to stop shooting threes, though. Another person said, Ant, you shot horribly again, 4 games in a row. And more people kept on going on and on and on and on and on. With the passing days, I'm becoming less and less of an Anthony Edwards. I like, if you're going to talk trash, you got to back it up, man. And I'm going to say what I said yesterday on the live that we did after they won the game. Anthony Edwards is in a hole, he's digging a hole for himself that he put himself in. And he's trying to climb out of it. You see, What happens when you talk a lot of trash, and the people that do this, you have to back it up. And what ends up happening is once we see that you're not backing it up, and once you realize you can't back it up, it builds more pressure on you. And with every shot, there's more pressure. With every missed layup, with every missed free throw, there's more pressure, and the pressure mounts. Because now you're trying to live up to the promises that you made that you can't seem to do. And that's where Anthony Edwards finds himself in right now. Let's, first of all, kill this all Michael Jordan talk. There ain't nothing remind me, nothing like Michael Jordan. You don't remind me nothing of Kobe. Let's just throw that in the garbage right now. Secondly, Anthony Edwards said, I got Kyrie. Kyrie Irving has been busting his ass these playoffs. Busting his ass. Luka Doncic has owned them. If we're looking at the best players in this series, out of the 3 best players, he's the 3rd. Kyrie's been better. Luka's been better. But he talks like as if he's the best player on the court. But he's not. And let's get to his comments about the free throws, which I thought was so lame and embarrassing. This dude went up there and said, they had more free throws than us. I want to go back to Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets. In Game 7, the Minnesota Timberwolves attempted 30 free throws. 30. And they made 26 of them. Do you know how many free throws the Denver Nuggets attempted in that game? 16. 16 free throws. Why weren't you talking about free throws then? Why didn't you talk about free throws after Game 1? Why didn't you talk about free throws after Game 2? Why are you talking about free throws now? Because you're bringing up free throws like they had a competitive advantage against you, but there you had more free throws than the champs, and you won. And you was talking about bring your ass. I got Kyrie. So help me explain it. When the Wolves had the advantage, I didn't hear nothing about free throws. But now all of a sudden, when you're losing and you're not living up to all of that big talk, now all of a sudden you want to talk about free throws. Bro, that is lame and is weak. It is lame. I think the first mistake Anthony Edwards made was opening his big mouth. He talks too much. And we all hate people like this in society. What has Anthony Edwards done to warrant him talking this much? At all. At all. And there are people like this. There are people in this, they ain't got a damn thing in their pocket. They got a little bit of change. And now they want to talk big. Now they want to talk like they the biggest boys on the block. Oh, we got all this money and blah, 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 blah. You guys got a few dollars. All of a sudden, they're ready to talk this big talk. Oh, they had a great year or great 2 years. Now they want to act like they Warren Buffett. It's like, humble yourself. Humble yourself. You got people in the media talking about he was tired. What? 22 years old, now we making an excuse. Anthony Edwards' biggest problem is he talks too much. He has a big mouth and he's not backing it up. Because had Anthony Edwards not talked as much as he did, we'll just say he's playing bad. That's it. That's it. And you're allowed to play bad. I think this is only the second time he's been in the playoffs. So you're allowed to go through the growing pains. But all of this yapping and chirping, you got to kill that. Because if you're going to do all that talking, stand on it. Don't be up, oh, no, man, the free throw. Like, yo, that's so lame to me. I'm getting tired of Anthony Edwards already. He talk way too much. Like, you talk a lot. You dude be talking like as if he got 3 finals MVPs and his trophy bin at his house. Like, yo, it's enough. Like, you talk a lot. Like, bro, you talk way too much. Like, yap. Nothing to show for it. The last 3 games before, he's been horrible. But yapping and yapping and yapping and yapping.